I am a true believer in, decentralized systems and decentralized finance in general. I think it grants us transparency, which I think private credit markets, as their name suggests, sorely lack. Crypto brings in capital markets from around the world. And when you do that, rates go down.
What does that mean for the brokerage? It means that their dollar share is shrinking. There's a joke in the industry that brokers are broke. And part of the reason why that is because of that.
That was the clearest I've ever heard anybody talk about Bitcoin
Nice.
and its benefits.
This is what I do.
Pierre Calzadilla and Venkatakrishnan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
I'd love to give folks a bit more on your complementary backgrounds. So let's start with you, Muk. You're a two-time founder with roots in crypto, medtech, and real-world assets. You co-founded Harvard's first crypto club, innovated a hearing aid, and sold a medtech company all while in high school. And Pierre is a former broker turned prop tech growth leader with 16-year track record building revenue teams at Trulia, Real Scout, and Local Logic. And your focus is on scaling.
Yep.
Let's start with a challenge.
All right.
What's your mission in one sentence?
Mission: to invest in productive people, businesses and assets. Why that matters in the real estate space is there's 1.3 million supposed real estate agents out there. People in the industry will know this fact to be true. There's only about 30% of those that produce about 80% of the value. And so we really want to empower those folks that are really driving the business, doing the most business, and be a partner with those, companies and individuals and their assets that they move. Why we started this company, well, one is a real problem that we saw. We both experienced it. Me on the brokerage side, when I first was in real estate from 01 to 06, seeing, especially a new agent in New York, when I first came into the business, you get lucky, close a deal day one, you won't get paid maybe for 45 to 90 days just because of title, co-op boards, all this crazy stuff. And so here you are, a brand new person coming to the space, and you're broke for 3 months on top of the expenditures that you put in. And that's just that's how you lose a lot of people in this industry. Like 30% quit that fast. And then personally, I really want to start a company with my friend who we became friends over the last several years. And that really made a difference and really provide value and wealth to our investors and hopefully build something like long lasting for ourselves.
Do you have anything to add?
No, just that we both experienced the problem firsthand. We were both brokers or / agents. I think it's very hard to care about the problem we set out to solve without having experienced it firsthand. And so that was very much the motivating factor behind us starting this, and just the size of the opportunity, or the size of the problem, I guess is the other way to frame it. So yeah, I have nothing else really to add to that.
Yeah.
And Pierre, you talked about, how important it was to have the right teammate to start this venture. And I hear that over and over again. It's always the team, it's always the people, in every investment space, especially. So what is that, what makes you such a complementary team? Because I feel like even when I first spoke with you, it was very apparent that, you guys fit together, but had really unique strengths.
I'm a young man in an old man's body. That's part one of that answer. I met Mook a few years ago when he was at another startup. We hit it off immediately, sort of, he's very creative, he's very driven. He's a great character. And so by the time, we would bounce ideas off each other. And then we finally had an idea that sort of was a match. And it was his idea first. I had very bad ideas I'd throw at him. And then he had some bad ones he threw at me. But this one came up and it was like a perfect sort of match where it's like my 25 plus years in this industry and his amazing fintech finance background really made for, and his real estate background because he started a brokerage at 18. So it's just a good match of expertise and knowledge and also, trust.
Mook, I'd love to talk about your founder background. Why did you want to innovate around the hearing aid?
It didn't start as innovating around the hearing aid as the original goal. I was 14 when I first got into this, and I had the responsibility of taking my grandfather to the hearing aid clinic or the hearing loss clinic. And we waited in 200,000 degree heat in India with mosquitoes everywhere for a couple hours. And then we got into the hearing test facility and they basically asked him to raise his hand for 3 minutes if he heard a sound. And I was miffed, to say the least. And so it really started out of pure frustration, like I think a lot of companies start with their founders. And then I saw a larger opportunity and I pursued it for a couple years. Naivete served me well in that case. I was very young. I did not know what it took to start a company. Forget about a medical device company with the compliance that comes with that. But yeah, it was definitely a trial by fire. So yeah.
What's the common thread between building medtech for your grandfather and building fintech for agents whose income gaps are just as invisible?
Okay, that's an interesting one. I think the common thread between all the companies I've done is an understanding that A, you do not need to necessarily reinvent the wheel to solve existing problems in the world. So with the medtech company, I was using like Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and do-it-yourself electronics to solve a problem that supposedly could not be solved with those devices. The real estate brokerage that I was running when I met Pierre, we were not reinventing the wheel there either. And then here, we're very much using battle-tested financial structures that have existed forever, right? Invoice factoring, for example, has been around for at least the last 50 to 100 years. And so I think that thoughtful and nuanced go-to-market and application of existing well-tested structures and mechanisms often can solve most of the problems that are out there. That's not to say that there's not value in like cutting edge tech and AI and otherwise. But I think that sometimes you just don't need that. And so, yeah, I very much approach things from first principles of like, what is the problem? What do you need to solve it? Do we need to make something new for that? So,
yeah, I think worth mentioning, like part of the reason why that makes sense, especially in the real estate vertical, is that it's a lagging industry. So between, all the regulation, federal regulations, state regulations, city regulations, et cetera, they can't move that fast. And because they're lagging, things that have been battle tested for the last 15 years have not really arrived yet in a great way into real estate. So, this was an opportunity that was sitting there that was just like, why has nobody done this better? And I think we were in a unique spot to see it.
Yeah.
Well, to follow up with that, Mook, you've been inside crypto, AI, and private credit. So why did you choose real estate? Specifically agent liquidity as your next battleground?
Well, I mean, I experienced the agent liquidity problem myself. So personal motivation, again, I think personal experience plays a huge part in why we're doing this. I think that I didn't have to pick real estate versus all those other things. What we're doing is all those other things just in real estate, right? So, for example, obviously we're doing private credit. We source debt to finance these deals that we do. We're quickly talking about moving to stablecoin payment rails, which I find really exciting. We might source liquidity from private credit markets in crypto and real world asset markets in the future. And so I think none of these are mutually exclusive. I think if you had asked me the same question 3 or 5 years ago, they would have had to be mutually exclusive. I think the market in crypto was not mature enough to support the movement of like, we're moving like $1 billion plus a year in commission volume, right? It just was very difficult to do that in crypto before now. So yeah, I think the answer is I disagree with the premise somewhat, but yeah.
And what does crypto provide that traditional finance doesn't?
Ooh, a lot of ways to dice that. First, I think that I am a true believer in decentralized systems and decentralized finance in general, and I mean that to say I'm not just a hodl Bitcoin until 200K kind of guy. First thing I think it grants is transparency, which I think private credit markets, as their name suggests, sorely lack. And so that's really interesting to me. Second is people talk a lot about the technical value of blockchains, but really what's interesting about, private credit markets and capital markets in general in crypto is that crypto brings in capital markets from around the world. And when you do that, rates go down for borrowing. And I think there's a real appetite for non-US crypto investors to have exposure to US prime real estate and other prime assets in the US. And so I think that's, another big sell for us. Yeah, I think those are probably the two biggest ones for me right now.
Take us through the traditional transaction for the agent, and where does Upfront now come in?
Yeah, 100%. So today, agent spends a lot of money upfront, no pun intended, on marketing, acquiring clients, acquiring leads. They get those clients. Those clients finally find a house, or they list the house, whichever side you're on, buyer or seller. Then they go to contract. So the contract period. So now they've already deployed capital. They go to contract. And now legally, once the contract has been signed, they've legally earned their commission. right? They legally earned their commission. They're right now. There's a time period varying by state from that point to the closing. That could be 2 weeks. Great, not that bad. Could be 90 days. There could be a lot of other issues that come up, and that's where Upfront comes in, right? And the typical companies come, the other companies come in, right? That's when they say, oh, you've earned your commission. The job is done. This is contract 97% success rate on that. Let's provide this earned commission now, which is what we call earned commission access. And so that's where we come in and close that gap. We say, no, we're going to partner at the enterprise and provide it to your agents. What's coming in right now in the near future is we're doing it both sides. So the brokerages also can get liquidity off of their future receipts as much as the agents can. Plus more, investments, banking, savings accounts, continuing down the path of building a full fintech solution specifically built for this 1099 industry, which is real estate.
You've spoken about the shift from underwriting credit to underwriting cash flow. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, tailwinds that kind of have ended up with the underwriting on cash flow and transactions being more useful. I think first thing is in our particular realm, cash flow problems cause credit problems. So if I'm underwriting a real estate agent for liquidity, it doesn't actually help me very much to look at their credit score because their credit score is likely going to be bad because they've had cash flow issues, right? So just for our specific example, that's worth noting. I think generally speaking, credit scores and like other kind of credit-based metrics matter less and less and give less insight or forecasting ability. So, we can very much accurately predict what an agent's production will be in the next 12 months based on their last 12 months of history. I cannot accurately predict their 12 months of production based on their credit score, for example, right? And I think last point I'll make on this is we're not a credit product, right? Fundamentally, we're a cash flow product, and so it doesn't make sense to underwrite on a credit basis. In general, I think people also want to own their underwriting. Companies want to own their underwriting, and when you're relying on external credit metrics like a FICO, et cetera, you know less about what you're underwriting based on, right? Versus getting raw data and underwriting on transactions, which I think is super powerful now. So yeah, that's a TLDR for me. Yeah.
We spoke about kind of why, why you? Like, that's a question that I hear often is like, well, why you as co-founders? Why are you here to solve the problem? But our last conversation kind of made me want to flip the switch. It's like, why not the banks? Why not someone else? And I think sometimes that's the real question.
Yeah, I think you want to hit this first.
Part of it.
Yeah, go for it.
Gaps. I think part of the answer is that banks aren't in a position. When you look at these large institutionals, they're looking at consumers in general, and there's trillions of dollars of opportunity when you look at the whole entire U.S. or the whole world of individuals. So when you start looking at verticals, so the real estate vertical, this is a very specific way that money moves, which is a lot of cash tied to 1099s, not to W-2s. There's a lot of capital market issues and also like local market issues, everything from floods and hurricanes, on top of everything else, right? And they have beautiful mortgages to focus on. Why would they focus on this? Where mortgages are nice fixed assets, where this is not a physical asset that they're backing, it's a transaction that they're backing, and so it's an expertise and risk that I don't think they're just not made to take with their balance sheets. And I'm sure Mook can fill in more.
I think you hit like most of what I was going to say, which is real estate especially is a vertical that has a lot of nuance to it. It's a transactional based industry. It's highly regulated. Compliance therefore causes a lot of issues into how to underwrite, right? And so if this asset class, let's call it the commission advance, but really the invoice factoring kind of asset class in real estate had been more developed than when we entered, I think there might have been some interest from banks. But the fact of the matter is there's $100 billion plus in residential commissions paid out every year. Roughly maybe $1 billion of that is moving through any kind of cash flow system. That's simply not enough data for banks to reasonably want to underwrite that risk. And, it's a real question of is the juice worth the squeeze for them of setting up a new kind of system for this. So in the future, do I see banks becoming our lenders for us to do this underwriting? For sure. I don't necessarily see the banks getting into this kind of invoice factoring, revenue-based financing kind of endeavor themselves, especially not in real estate. Yeah.
And let's talk about the end users, the customers, who's benefiting. So for brokers, they're able to attract and retain real estate agents. Can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, for sure. So when you look at the space today, what's happened over the last 50 years, if you look at even the creation of Remax, I think it was in the 60s, that was the first time you saw this commission split situation come up. So 3-second sidebar on commission splits. You purchase a home, the commission's included in the price of the home. The value of the home is based on the market value. The seller typically paid that commission. Today, buyer and seller each pays their own side. Well, all that volume is what is basically negotiated between the agent and the brokerage. So some brokers give you 100% of your commission. So great, congrats, you sold the home, you get it all. Well, what does that mean for the brokerage? It means that their dollar share is shrinking. There's a joke in the industry that brokers are broke. And part of the reason why that is because of that, because the agents are holding more and more of the commission dollar. So what's happened, brokers aren't tech companies, they're not fintech companies, they're really platforms that agents run on. And so what's happened today, the new platforms which are hitting the stock market highs and really taking a lot of value of the space are like Real and EXP, Compass, right? These are all everybody knows from the news. Well, those aren't the biggest companies in the space, really, when you look at like sales volume. Like Anywhere is the biggest one, right? And others. So the issue is, what do you do to differentiate? And so what Real and XP have done, they're officeless. They use financial tools and healthcare as ways to attract agents. Because like once you're capped at 100% commission, what else is there? And so we really wanted to create a platform that every brokerage in the US, especially again, the productive ones, can bring into their business to differentiate themselves and provide value to these end users, these agents, through recruiting, retention, and also revenue. So give them a new line where they can actually create more value for the company and their agents, and it's a win-win for all three parties.
With the Vero acquisition, Upfront now manages $2 billion plus in commissions. What does that unlock for the platform, especially with the liquidity engine coming online?
I'll take the first part, and I'll give you the fun part. So I'll be remiss not to mention in that we also acquired Ish, who's our third co-founder, who really is the third pillar here, and is not with us because he's in Dallas. But that's our product stack, right? And so Upfront is really servicing as the agent layer. And then Vero, which is the new name of Vero, which is the new name of the accounting platform, is the anchor product that really allows us to build this embedded finance vision we have for real estate.
Yeah, I think, embedded finance begs the question, what is the finance embedded in? And for us, that means the back office accounting. Couple things that have a lot of value to us in that system. The multi-billion dollars moving through there in commission disbursement volume provides an immediate pool for us to service liquidity needs there. I think that's not table stakes per se, but it's pretty obvious that that's a value for us. I think beyond that, and I say this carefully because we are very cognizant about data privacy and the importance of keeping broker and transaction data private and secluded. It does, however, give us the ability to offer novel financial services and products based on that data. For example, revenue-based financing for brokers, which is pretty much has been unthinkable in the past, right? Being able to do enterprise resource management, surface insights and data. And so I think there's just a whole host of opportunities that are unlocked by essentially owning the central nervous system of the brokerage, which is the back office accounting platform. So, yeah.
Yeah, like the back office has been a cost center for most brokerages for all time. Pricing models in this space have been horrible. They're tied to agent growth, for example, which is not really the right way to price this. And it's basically just been a service layer that just provides a very fundamental thing, but doesn't give anything of value to the brokerage. When the brokerage's number one lifeblood is actually agents. And so what we've done is said, okay, great, here's this anchor. Everybody has it. You need a back office. You can't function without it. But it's stuck in this corner of your office used by your accounting team and delivers no value to the rest of the vertical or to the company. So we said, no, this is wrong. If you're a broker, as I mentioned earlier, your revenue's tight. You don't have much else that you can squeeze on. You're looking for ways to give value to recruit and retain and drive revenue for your agents. And so Upfront with Vero finishes this story. So we're able to bring Upfront in, give agents a P&L, their expense management, and actual value props like healthcare and others that now becomes a value back to the brokerage. So they're able to retain, recruit agents, and also they get some revenue through those relationships while the agent is saving like 60 to 80% of the typical fees that they would pay for some of these financial products that are out there.
Oh, it's brilliant. And were there any challenges in terms of infrastructure that you want to speak on?
Yeah, I mean, the reason we ended up pursuing the Vero acquisition is because the state of financial infrastructure in real estate is, let's say, behind the times, frankly, right? We like to be able to, know what's going on within a brokerage so that we're able to give them the services that we want to. And as we started kind of integrating with other back offices or looking at kind of historical data, we realized those systems are archaic. And so we wanted to kind of own that ourselves and build it out ourselves.
You've got these back office systems that are closed ecosystems as well. And they're not made to do much else. Right, they're just going to move money and track the accounting and end of story. And so I think the big unlock here is this ability to not just utilize the data, but to deliver value on that data to the brokerage. All the companies that work in the space are sitting outside the box. So they're interrupting. They're coming in and interrupting the broker-agent relationship. Right, the leader in the space is sending documents to the agent. The agent has to go upload private documents up to that system. And then they're sending another document back to the brokerage that the brokerage has to sign so that the agent can get their commission early. And they're also paying up to 30% on that for 2 weeks. This is ridiculous. If it wasn't commercial like real estate, this would be usury rates, 100%, right? And so what we said is that is a broken, horrible system. Let's bring it in-house. Let's make it clean. Let's take away all that nonsense, and let's make it a brokerage value prop. And that's really one of the biggest differences, is that we're actually bringing this, taking away all this pain from them and reducing the costs, by an order of magnitude, right? We're literally 80% less of what those fees are. And
I think that what I'm hearing when you speak about Upfront, both of you, is like, it's a no-brainer, really.
We were talking to our lead investor, Diagram. Shout out Diagram, they're awesome. But we were talking to them yesterday about what our biggest learnings have been, what has and hasn't worked. And really, for me anyways, as someone who has worked in real estate but not nearly as long as Pierre, right? Financial education and fixing the stigma that's been associated with getting cash flow solutions in this industry is very much key for us. The biggest competitor in this space has left the ecosystem in a state of affairs that, frankly, agents look at what we do as payday loans or as predatory kind of products. And so it's very much about doing financial literacy and education. What is the time value of money? Why does it make sense to get your money now versus later, right? How do you do the tax deduction with your LLC for our fee, right? Versus, some outside third party essentially trying to steal 30% of your commission, right? And so I think that's the big one for me.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it.
How do you see decentralized finance continuing to take a bigger role?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to commit right now. We are pretty close to getting to a commitment on switching our payment rails to stablecoin rails. I think that's a big deal for us. It's really, as someone who's been involved in crypto for, many years before it became cool, and then before it became uncool again, to be in crypto, it's cool to see that crypto actually has use cases where they are undeniably better than traditional financial infrastructure. Stablecoin payment rails being a great example of that. I think in the future, there's so many things that we can do, right? We're able to source data on chain. We're able to sell our existing book on chain. So there's a bunch of other stuff that I think is downstream by a couple years for us. Immediately, though, what we want to do is start working on stablecoin rails. Like, immediately, what's the value? Like, we can't do a transaction on Sunday right now for our agents with banks. That's ridiculous, right? And so stablecoins solve that. And so I see it playing a bigger and bigger role. For the record, when I first started this company, it started as a crypto company. Right. Actually, we were going to source debt from on-chain sources. We were going to do kind of all the ZK, TLS, kind of all that kind of stuff. But again, the market just wasn't mature enough at the time to support that kind of very sophisticated, compliance-heavy application. And so now we're finally getting to the point that it is realistic. So yeah, we're speccing out, starting with stable coins, and then we'll go from there and see where the space goes.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning. What does that mean to people? I'm the old real estate guy here. So what does that mean to use stable coins? It doesn't mean anything to the user. They're still getting real money in their bank accounts, right? Yes. What it means is today, if you think about how money moves today, it's some bank has a routing number and an account number, and they're connecting through this crazy system that they all have to agree on so the money can move from Wells Fargo to Chase. Well, you ever notice there's delays in that? The reason why there's delays is because they're making something called float. And that's why there's fees and all this stuff tied into it, and everybody's getting penny pinched all across the process. It is an inefficient process. So that specifically is the
Purposely
thing that
inefficient.
purposely inefficient.
Yeah.
So that's specifically the space that we want to fix, to make it faster to get paid and to move the money efficiently without changing the actual money. So the money itself starts as USD, ends as USD, and what stablecoin is, it's a digital representation of that money that moves faster than real money, but when it comes out the other end, it's real money again. Yeah. So it still goes into your Chase account, it still goes into your Wells Fargo account, but it just moved on different rails way faster than the typical banking system would allow.
Yeah, for old real estate guy, you nailed that, Pierre.
Thank you.
That might have been, that was the clearest I've ever heard anybody talk about Bitcoin
Nice.
and its benefits.
This is what I do.
No, you really do.
Yeah, he takes the garble I spit out and he makes it human language. Yeah.
And Mook, you've also talked about kind of the importance of risk appetite, like investors in crypto, and how important having more a higher risk appetite is for newer founders and startups.
Yeah. I mean, I'll get to crypto's risk appetite in a second. I think the normal traditional financial private credit markets used to have this risk appetite, and so you saw Sivo kind of grow up really quickly. You saw a bunch of like CapChase and all these other kind of fintech revenue-based financing lenders. Last one standing is Pipe, basically, out of all of those. And a lot of them were on floating rate kind of debt facilities. Those blew up quickly as rates increased over the last couple years. And so what that meant is that forest fire kind of situation where right now we're in the steps of the process where the fire has burnt out all of small and middle private credit lenders, period, right? I can count on probably two hands the number of really sophisticated top tier lenders that will do between a $1 and $20 million facility. Crypto has no such issues, right? And so the crypto investors have always had a larger risk appetite. I think it comes back to something I mentioned earlier, which is crypto investors are also not just US investors, right? And so if you're sitting in, like a BRICS nation or something, your inflation is high, your currency volatility is high, you want to get exposure to stable yield producing assets. How do you do that? Well, you have to eat a little bit of risk, right? And so you're going to be more willing to invest into U.S. prime real estate for a lower yield because it's more stable than your alternative, right? And so I think crypto markets are slowly, there's still a delta between what they're willing to pay or what they're willing to earn, essentially, and what traditional financial institutions are willing to earn. That gap will close, but I don't think it'll ever close 100% structurally, just because crypto investors naturally have to have a higher risk appetite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that you might deny this, but I feel like this will be a good question for you.
I deny. Yeah.
So, it at the Edge for Tomorrow, we like to ask, what's one trend or signal that other people are not seeing? And I think this is something that you do a very good job of. And we've probably already spoken about a couple. But is there anything else that, that people aren't picking up on right away?
I think Earnify is a great one. I am definitely biased. Their CEO, Aaron, is awesome, and he's an angel investor in our company. Earnify is just a good example because they're solving a real world problem, which is earned wage access, very similar to what we do. So you can see kind of why he saw potential in us. But they're doing it on crypto rails in a really sophisticated and intelligent, deliberate manner. People are paying attention to this, and regardless of politics of Trump aside, I think the Trump administration is making huge strides on the crypto kind of deregulation, or actually more accurately regulation, right? The SEC was very much in regulation through enforcement. Trump administration is trying to take a different tact on that. I think that would be the big tailwind I see. It's definitely not everyone is paying attention to it. There's a great couple of reports that came out of Real World Assets also showing that Private credit is now a larger crypto AUM kind of market than treasury bills. I think that is a very interesting data point. Treasury bills have always been the highest, deepest liquidity kind of market out there, period. Private credit being bigger than that by almost an order of magnitude in crypto is very, very telling about what investors are looking for in those markets. They're not just looking for safety and stability. They're also looking for yield, and they're looking for novel asset classes to get in early. And so as you see private credit eclipsing T-bills, I think that's definitely something for institutionals to keep in mind, is that, crypto is not just about tokenizing existing assets in the real world that are, safe and not going to go anywhere. There is a much more dynamic underpinning that I think is going to come to the forefront of crypto over the next 5 years.